Okay, so welcome. Thanks for coming tonight. If you had learned about water and sewer systems on your Christmas list, we can help you out tonight. So thanks for coming in. And we're going to do this a little differently. We have, as you notice, we have some poster boards in the back. So those are going to help support this PowerPoint presentation. There's more detailed information in the back. And I have about 24 slides. So we'll go through those a little faster than normal with the expectation that we have more information in the back if you have follow-up questions. So with that, a little introduction. I'm John Teal, I'm the Engineering Department Manager. And we are the South Tahoe Public Utility District. We're a public utility, so this is your system. There's no profit, there's no shareholders, you own this system. And we have 5 elected directors on our board, and we have, I think 4 of them are here tonight. So if you'd like to meet them, come see me and I'll introduce you. So the board provides vision and direction for the district, and they have complete financial control over everything that we do. So we have a $37 million annual budget, and we're currently implementing a 10-year, $93 million capital improvement program. And all of our assets, $1.5 billion, so there are a lot of assets out there to take care of. There's 114 of us here at the district. Right now, our average tenure is 13 years. A lot of specialized education, certifications, training, a very high-performance workforce. We're working for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So rain, shine, snow, fire, power goes out, we continue to provide water for you and water treatment and disposal services. And I really wanted to highlight the district's commitment to be a visible, proactive partner in your community, to provide safe, reliable, cost-effective water, wastewater, recycled water services. And here tonight to create awareness and understanding of our system, of the needs, and then provide balance over time between system needs, the user rates, and our staff's capacity to complete the work cost-effectively. And certainly we want to maintain a long-term, sustainable, efficient, cost-effective enterprise. So today, we want to learn more, provide input for your water, wastewater, recycled water systems. We want to inform you and hear from you. So there's 4 components for tonight. Going to do, in support of the boards in the back, a quick overview of our water, wastewater, recycled water systems, and then talk about some recent investments and improvements that we've made. And by recent, I mean in the last 5 years. And then talk about our substantial ongoing and future needs. And finally, just one slide on the public participation process, of which tonight is a part of that. So first, let's take a look at our systems. I just have 3 slides, 1 for each. The water system, very complex, 14,000 customer connections. On a peak day, let's say 4th of July weekend, we're serving up to 7 million gallons per day. We have 13 wells, and we are 100% groundwater at SDPUD. We have 253 miles of water lines, 31 different pressure zones because of all the different elevations around town. And that requires 16 booster stations and 34 pressure reducing valves throughout our district service area with 19 storage tanks. So I have a few photos up here. Lower left is our South Upper Truckee well house. And over here is our Grizzly Mountain booster station. And up here is Lookout Tank. And this photo was shortly after the Angora fire, so there's been some restoration activities out here at the time of the photo. And of course, this is a very important component for fighting that fire at that time. So our wastewater system, 17,800 connections. We serve all the customers on the South Shore are our wastewater customers. So there's more than the water side. 312 miles of gravity sewers, 41 sewage pump stations, 19 miles of force mains, all coming to the treatment plant. On an average day, a typical day, dry weather day, 3.5 million gallons per day is processed. The plant is rated for 7.7 million gallons per day on a dry weather basis. But when there's storm events, we see in excess of 18 million gallons per day here at the plant, which is very problematic. We're very proud of this award we received in 2001. The US EPA, it's really the #1 plant of the year. So very proud of this record and something we want to maintain absolutely. Our plant is 100% recycled. Our biosolids, this is our biosolids building up here. Our biosolids are dewatered and then they're trucked and used for composting operations at Bentley, Nevada. And the water is goes to an expansive recycled water system 26 miles away. So 26 miles from the treatment plant over Luther Pass and down into Alpine County. So about 10 miles from here is the Luther Pass pump station. This makes that final push over Luther Pass. It's about a 1,400-foot lift. So we're seeing 600 PSI at this pump station. Our power bills here they've been as high as $900,000 per year. So a lot going on at that pump station. Thereafter, after that 4.5, 5 miles over Luther Pass, the last 11 miles go by gravity to our Alpine County facilities. So I'm showing some of those down here. And this photo is, Whitford's is over here and Markleyville is somewhere over here, just to give you some kind of idea of where we're looking. This is Harvey Place Reservoir. This is where recycled water typically goes. This is Indian Creek Reservoir. It's a freshwater reservoir. So we have 2 reservoirs and 2 dams. And this is really the base of our operations here. We have a ranch house and some new facilities that I'll talk about later. And over 3,000 acres are utilized down here for pasture irrigation and grazing. You can see the green areas, obviously that's getting water from us. So used for cattle grazing and alfalfa production, and there's actually a hydroelectric recovery facility right there. You can see at the time of this photo that we're actually excavating for these pivot rig irrigation fields that you see completed here. And I'll be talking more about that in a few more, some slides coming up. So there's a quick overview of the 3 systems. Now let's take a look at recent investments and improvements in the last 5 years. So in 2014, the board began a series of annual rate increases for 5 years. And so your rates and some of these rate increases have helped fund over $50 million in critical improvements over this 5-year period. So let's take a look at some of those investments and improvements. First, looking at fire hydrant installation projects, the goal is community-wide fire flow. And our goals for fire flow are 1,000 gallons per minute at a residential hydrant. And we want a hydrant every 500 feet so that any property is within 250 feet of a hydrant. So right now we have 2,000 hydrants in our system. Since 2014, we've installed 200 hydrants. And so what's a hydrant? Sorry, let me go back to that one. What's it cost to install a hydrant? Here's a hydrant. That is about $2,000, and the rest of this installation and all the excavation and all the restoration is another $10,000. So it's about $12,000 per hydrant. 200 hydrants, $12,000, $2.4 million. We were fortunate and we worked hard to get a grant from the U.S. Forest Service, $830,000 toward this work through the Fire Partnership. Next project, we'll look at waterline installation projects. Again, this is mostly supporting the community-wide goal for fire flow. Again, 1,000 gallons per minute, adding hydrants at every 500 feet. Sorry, different buttons. Since 2014, we've installed 23,000 feet of large water lines, 6-inch and 8-inch water lines. The water lines previously were more like 2-inch and 4-inch. We just weren't going to get the 1,000 gallons per minute, even if we added a hydrant. So it costs about $330 per foot to install the water line, and with hydrants, these water lines cost some $8 million. So it adds up. We were able to work and obtain low-interest state revolving funds for this project as well. It's about 1.6 to 1.8% loans. Finally, on the water side, in the last 5 years, water meter installation projects. So our goal is community-wide metering by 2025, which meets the state law. It also saves water. And water is heavy, so it costs a lot to produce. It costs a lot to pump it and provide it to you at pressure. So it's very expensive. It takes a lot of energy. So water conservation saves energy as well. We've installed 5,400 meters since 2014, and I'm showing some of the meter installation process over here. We have 2,000 meters about remaining to be installed over the next 2 years. It's expensive. It's about $2,500 per meter installation. So if you add all this up times 2,500, it's $21 million. And this is money that we would probably rather spend on water lines, on hydrants, on those fire flow improvements. But to meet state law, we needed to install these meters. We were able to obtain low-interest state revolving fund loans. We actually got a $4 million loan forgiveness, so this is essentially a 0% interest loan. So moving from water to sewer and to the treatment plant just out back here, primary clarifier rehabs. We rehabbed 2 clarifiers, and as you can see in the before pictures, the concrete was falling apart, and a lot of the systems, the mechanisms were being corroded, and the drives were old. So concrete repairs and coating, grout floor replacement, a new drive and mechanism. You can see that this is the mechanism in the drive here, and a new grout floor, extending the life of this very expensive critical system over 20 years. Staying at the wastewater treatment plant, 2 aeration basins were rehabilitated. So you can see over here the concrete was falling apart and spalling. We needed to replace the diffusers. This is the completed project. So concrete repairs and coatings, a brand new aeration system, and times 2 basins. We replaced the influent piping and increased the capacity. So again, extending the life of this facility 20 years, very cost effective. One more project at the treatment plant, the emergency generator. And so we're in here right now. Here's the parking lot out front. So just past here is the generator site. This is currently under construction and will be online in 2019. It's going to be a permanent diesel-powered backup. Our existing genset is out here in a semi-trailer, and it does not meet current air regulations, and it's unreliable. It's actually dangerous to operate. So this will be a great new facility, providing continuous wastewater treatment and export when we have complete power outage. So again, power outage, we continue to collect, treat, and export wastewater. If you remember back, I talked about Luther Pass. We did over $4 million of improvements at Luther Pass. So over here is the inside of the main facility, and there's 4 pumps and 4 motors in there. So we needed new power and controls. We converted the voltage to 4160, which allowed us to install 4 new high-efficiency motors. So those are the gray units here. And we're also rehabilitating 2 of the 700 horsepower pumps and 2 of the 1,000 horsepower pumps. So in these other photos, that's the inside of the new control building, and here's the exterior. Finally, down in Alpine County, Diamond Valley Ranch Irrigation and Energy Recovery Project. The plan was to, and here's the plan looking at 3 center pivot rig fields for alfalfa irrigation and new high pressure piping that allows us to recover energy at this facility here. So that was the plan, and that was completed in 2018. So So over here is a picture of the irrigation rig in action. We have 70 acres producing alfalfa. We just had our alfalfa completed, harvested about 2 months ago. And in that, we're recovering 55 kilowatts of energy in that control, in that recovery facility here. So that's enough power for about 50 homes. So those are some of the major investments and improvements in the last 5 years. Now let's take a look at some of the substantial needs for ongoing and future improvements. Going back to the water side, community-wide fire flow. We've done a lot on the water side. There's a lot more to do, really. More than 10% of our service area has insufficient fire flow. And again, 1,000 GPM, 500-foot spacing. We're looking to add 120 hydrants and 1,000 linear feet of new water lines, larger water lines, to deliver that 1,000 gallons per minute. So you might think that 10%, that sounds pretty good. But we feel like even at 10%, really it puts the entire community at risk. If there's a fire going through an area that has insufficient fire flow, that fire is going to spread and go through town. So every community is at risk, and every hydrant matters. So we have this, this map is in the back, so you can look in more detail. But we have all the hydrants identified by flow, and you can see where the areas in town are where we have insufficient flow. We also want to, we're really interested in streamlining the implementation of these fire flow projects. We'd like to complete these in the next 5 to 10 years if we get enough funding to do this work. And we are aggressively seeking grants and loans to complete this work. So moving on, we have aging assets in the water system. Again, here's a map that we have in the back. You can look at how old our pipes are. The water system was not built by the district. The water system was built by a number of different contractors and small water companies in the 50s and 60s. So the district started taking these systems over in the 70s and 80s. So they're old systems, 50 to 60 years old. They're really starting to reach the end of their useful life in many cases. So issues with water lines needing replacement or rehabilitation, and also with wells and tanks. And this is a pressure reducing valve station. It's just undersized and needs to be replaced. It's corroding. It's reached the end of its useful life. So a lot of assets out there, a lot of potential projects. We are implementing an asset management program to help prioritize our projects and extend the useful life of our assets. So identify risk of failure. If we're looking at the probability of failure and the consequence of failure to help prioritize all the various projects. And we're implementing a number of programs to extend the useful life of our assets. On the water system, for example, pressure management systems, leak detection systems, and cathodic protection systems to protect steel systems against corrosion. Again, we want to extend the useful life of our systems and minimize costs over time. So benefits of timely improvements. There's a lot of benefits. In our water system, to reduce leaks, again, water's heavy. Reducing leaks saves water, it saves energy. We can avoid expensive emergencies and maintain levels of service for pressure, flow, and reliability. Now moving on to the wastewater collection system, again, aging assets. Our system was built in the 50s and 60s. It's getting old. Many of our assets are approaching or exceeding their useful life. And on the map over here, we have this in the back on the poster board. You can view in more detail. It shows the different ages of the pipe, mostly 50 to 60 years old, and also highlights the work we've done in recent years to look at the inside of our pipes to assess the condition. So we're looking at replacement and rehabilitation projects on sewer lines, manholes, force mains. And in the past year, we bought a new TV truck and new TV equipment. We looked at 10% of our sewer collection system. And by looking at that 10%, we've made these projections. Perhaps we can complete these in the next 10 years. But based on what we've seen so far, we're looking at 1.5% of our system needs complete replacement. The water lines need to be reinstalled. I'm sorry, the sewer lines need to be reinstalled. And 2% of our system needs relining. So it's relining an existing sewer pipe is about $150 a foot. A new sewer is more like $400 a foot. So similar issues with pump stations. As I mentioned, we have 44 different pump stations. We have what we call Big Five pump stations. Our 5 largest pump stations we're most concerned about. And of those 5, I'm showing 2 of those. Here's the Tahoe Keys pump station at the corner of Tahoe Keys and Venice Boulevard. This is an old station. It's undersized, has reliability problems. It doesn't have enough pumps. The existing pumps and wet well are falling apart. It has old electrical, and the generator does not meet current air requirements. So lots to be done at Tahoe Keys. And this is the Upper Truckee. Pump station down here. Some similar problems: aging pumps, old electrical, insufficient capacity, reliability problems, and right on the Upper Truckee River. So a lot of concern here. A failure here is going to mean potentially a sewer spill right into the river, right into the lake. That's just not acceptable. Again, we're implementing an asset management program to help prioritize projects and reduce costs over time, assessing the condition of our assets, identifying risks of failure, looking at ways to extend the useful life of assets and minimize costs over time. Again, the benefits of timely improvements in the sewer collection system. A lot of our pipes, we have 312 miles of sewer lines. And there's a lot of joint failures and cracks in all of this 312 miles. So groundwater and stormwater gets into our pipes. It gets into the pipes, it gets into the sewer system, and it's difficult to pump. And it overloads our pumping facilities. It goes to the plant. It's hard to process. So limiting water intrusion really saves energy, it saves process costs, and reduces the risks of spills. We really want to avoid expensive emergencies. And over here is a view of emergency repair on the Tahoe Keys sewer that was completed in 2017. So we had a pipe failure, and basically the road collapsed and developed a sinkhole. So this repair of this sewer costs about $400,000. If we would have found this ahead of time, we think that would have been something less than half price, less than $200,000. So we really want to look ahead with our asset management program, identify risks, and implement improvements before they fail to this extent. Again, minimize failures, protect the environment. Sewer spills are just not an option. One more slide, aging assets at the wastewater treatment plant. I talked about a number of projects that we're doing and we completed at the treatment plant. We still have some aging assets out here. Looking at the plant view down here, here's our generator site for reference. We have 3 secondary clarifiers with similar problems as the primary clarifiers, degrading concrete and old mechanical systems and old drive units that need to be replaced. So we need major rehabilitation of those 3 secondary clarifiers. We have a couple ballast ponds out here. As you can see in this picture, that concrete is falling and breaking away. That needs to be replaced. And at the blower building is located out here. Here's an inside view. These blowers are actually in pretty good shape, although they're old. We just rebuilt 2 of these for $15,000 a piece. If you had to purchase these, replace these, it'd be more like $200,000 a piece. So again, using an asset management approach to reduce costs over time, there's underground piping that is leaking and needs to be replaced. So again, we're implementing asset management program to identify projects and priorities. We're looking for energy efficiencies throughout the plant. We want to avoid emergency projects and again, protect the environment. So that's a brief look at our substantial ongoing and future needs, and there's more information on the poster boards in the back that we can talk about later. So I have a final slide on the public participation process. So starting tonight and over the next 5-6 months, there'll be substantial opportunities to learn more and provide input on your water, wastewater, and recycled water systems. So as you can see, in December, we had the mailer, we have the workshop tonight. In January, we'll have a first look at potential rate increases, what kind of rates it would take to implement certain amounts of projects over time, the projects that I talked about in the previous slides, for example. So we get these in January, we'll review these with the board. So in February, we'll revise the rates, we'll look at what level of projects we can fund reasonably in the community. And in March, we will be mailing out what's known as a Proposition 218 notice to you. So it'll be the board's notice of potential rate increases. We think potential rate increases over the next 5 years. And you'll have the opportunity to essentially vote no on the rate increases and mail that back to the district. So in April, the proposed budget will be released and discussed with the board and the public. And in May, results from the Proposition 218 voting will need to be received. The board will consider these and all other factors and ultimately approve the annual budget. So the Prop 218 notice addresses potential rate increases, maximum potential rate increases in the next 5 years. But each year the board reviews the budget situation and approves budget and rate increases on an annual basis. And once that is approved, that's approved in May, the next fiscal year starts in July, and that's when the rate increases will take effect. So that's the PowerPoint for tonight. And again, we have the poster boards in back. We'll have engineers and others there to talk and answer questions for you. Is there any questions, comments, any discussion for the full group at this time? Yes, sir.
I worked on that.
Yeah.
And I worked with Peter Keeler.
No.
I was on ball dams and all that stuff. And I've been here over 50 years next year. And when I come here, still to go to the place. Bought these people problems, bought these water companies. So you want us to take upgrades on these water companies that you bought.
You know, they were acquired in the 70s and 80s. I'm actually not sure what the drove those decisions at that time.
Yeah, there was a water company in Sierra Track. And, well, they bought about half a dozen of this thing over here.
You're right. I mean, we're a conglomeration of a lot of different water systems.
Yeah, now you want us to pay for upgrades on those water systems you bought.
Well, we've been, we acquired these water systems. I mean, they had value at that time. I mean, so they're purchased in the 70s and 80s, and we're, 30, 40 years away. We've been using that system for a number of decades. And like any infrastructure, they're going to degrade over time. And, at the time, fire flow really these weren't designed for fire flow for the most part. We were just doing, installations for domestic flow and irrigation. So we see a lot of 2-inch lines and 4-inch and 4-inch lines out there. Obviously, fire flow is, a major concern for us these days. So right now, that's really driving all or most of these projects. And at the same time, we're going to implement certain asset management practices like cathodic protection to extend the life of those systems that we acquired for another 50 years. over 60% of our system is steel water lines. And our thinking is that we can install this cathodic protection system-wide for about $12 million. And then, again, that'll extend the life of those systems 50 plus years. But a lot of work to be done between now and then to make that happen.
Well, the fire department got the best rating. You know, we got all new trucks, well, we paid for that too.
The insurance rate?
Yeah. But they got the best rating, was in the paper the other day, the results they got, they were rated because they got all the newer equipment. But they got that one ladder truck that's in the airport in the hangar out there, they're fighting over that because they have problems with it. And this summer I saw another fire truck behind the senior center by the rec center. Was a new ladder truck in there, and it was about $300,000 less than the one they paid for. I talked to the guy, I said, we bought another one? The guy said, no, this is just another demonstration. He was a manufacturer rep. And when we have those upgrade trucks like that, and all the training the guys have, but they close the station, you know.
Sure, gas station too.
Part of that increased rating of Lake Valley was John was one of the district staff people that helped them answer those questions, and we demonstrated by a lot of the fire hydrants and water lines we were installing at that time, and we had upgraded them, supporting more continuing to upgrade our system, have helped Lake Valley get a much higher fire rating, which does result in some people's fire insurance on their house decreasing.
Yeah.
If you look at the company that actually looks at the rating,
Yeah.
some companies do, some companies don't.
Oh, they houses now have gas rating.
Yes.
Yeah, and these all of them.
And I think, back to your original question, I'm Shannon Catul, the AGM here. Your initial question about those water companies
Yeah.
and why are we paying for those?
Yeah.
Those are, you're right, we did acquire those in the 50s and 60s. So those ratepayers, those customers, they have been customers of ours now for 50 years or longer. And so all along, they have been paying into the district, and so we've taken those rates, and we have made upgrades to other parts of the system as we've gone along. So those people, to some extent, have bought into the infrastructure of the district and bought into the assets and the improvements. They've helped pay for the improvements of other portions of the organization and providing water to the rest of the community. We're also, so now we are focusing on upgrading their parts of the system that see that need, that their deteriorated assets that now need to be built up, where they've been paying for other people's assets in the past as well.
Now, what about commercial? Because I worked on that big lot down there in Ski Run, that big building down there, that timeshare. I worked on that. I worked on the one in Heavenly. Are they paying the commercial rates? Are they going up substantial? Because I worked on another one down, well, I worked on all the casinos.
Yeah. And so we do have commercial rates. They're actually not that much higher than our residential rates. But those facilities also, when they make a new connection to provide a new service to a new facility, they have to pay a connection fee, which essentially buys into the assets and the infrastructure that have been built and paid for by previous businesses and residents.
Yeah.
So they do pay into the system in that way.
And with these improvements, I would add, I mean, with these improvements, we're getting higher levels of service than when we bought the systems. We're buying, again, systems with small water lines that didn't meet fire flow. We're really requiring a higher level of service these days with the fire risk. Any other questions?
With our water meter installation, are you guys happy with that contractor and all the water meters?
Oh, we're especially happy that they're the low bidder. All of our work goes to the lowest responsible bidder. And I would say if you look at the bids over the past 3 contracts, that low bidder has bid $2.2 million less than the next lowest bidder. So We like having that extra $2.2 million.
Yeah, I had you forgot to put a rubber plug in the top of the metal cover. And I seen the boss, and I said, and he come over and put the rubber plug in himself. And he was busy, that guy was all over town, you know. But I don't understand why you were in this section here, and then you're over here, and then you're back here, and then you didn't finish Sarah track. Then you're back over in this track, and then you're here, why you didn't go through and finish complete like where my house is over Bishu, that track wasn't completed. And then you're in the Sierra track, so they're back in there again doing that, finishing that. Why you didn't finish one track first, then the next track?
We're mostly completing neighborhood by neighborhood,
Yeah.
unless there's,
But it was 1 year this, and then the next year this, and then I went, what?
yeah, and we're looking, you know, each year we look at, you know, what's a reasonable number of meters to install in a construction season. You know, we're looking, I think last year we did 1,600 meters.
Yeah.
And if you look at a water meter installation, it looks pretty simple, but you multiply that by 1,600, and each one of them is different. Each one is in a different yard, it's in a driveway, it's a landscape area, it has different types of piping, there's, you know, landscaping and boulders, so it's really a very complex project to implement. But we are trying to complete, you know, a given neighborhood at a time, so that, you know, once we complete a construction season, like all of Sierra Track, for example, has all of their meters in place, and everybody's, you know, being built under the same metering program. So in Sierra Track right now, really, there's only one segment that isn't metered, and it's just the corridor on Sierra Boulevard, and that will be done next year as part of the city's improvement project. So we're also working with other agencies in the city to coordinate our work with their work.
I got another question.
Yes, sir. You're on fire. Let's go.
Bypass road. How much would it cost us as a ratepayer? They got to replace, like Blaine Mullis said, they got to replace all their sewer lines and all the water lines and all the underground electrical and everything in that whole section.
So the Loop Road project?
For that, if the bypass road goes
Yeah.
through.
It's the same price as you paid to get in here tonight.
Well, that's gonna cost a lot of money.
It's going to cost ratepayers no money.
And they're building a new timeshare back there, and they're building the other half. Who wants a 5-lane highway in front of your timeshare?
That I can answer. But we are, the district ratepayers will pay nothing towards relocating underground utilities as part of that project. That will be borne by the project and its developers. Our estimates for that work are somewhere between, I would say, $1 million and $3 million, depending on what types of redevelopment that they decide to do. Okay, last chance for questions. All right, I heard that one before.
No, I don't. Methane gas. At night, they release that sewer gas in the atmosphere. And it stinks sometimes in town, you can smell it. Because I live over by the golf course, a little one, and you can smell it, and they release that methane gas. So how many cities is there in the world? 5,000, 50,000 cities, and they all release that methane gas in the atmosphere. I worked in Alaska 2 years in Prudhoe Bay on top. I worked at a gathering center as a millwright, set machinery. We had a flare pad there, it was as big as this room. And it was lit up all the time to burn just gas off. And the refineries, you see them, they got a flame out there all the time. They're burning off the excess gas. Why can't? Stupid, burn off this methane.
Well, we're not releasing Methane gas, we've actually been doing quite a bit in our plant to reduce odors over time. There's still some areas of the plant that we're working on to reduce odors. And I really, any more comments on the methane?
It's not really, the smell is in the plant is more high, usually hydrogen sulfide. And that's the compound that we actually have meters for to measure. There are some other compounds that come out of the sewage, but it's not methane gas. We actually, when we handle solids, methane gas comes from the digestion process of the solids. We don't do digestion here. We dewater our raw sludge and ship it out of here over the hill for composting in the Carson Valley into an agricultural operation. And so what you smell is a lot of times, we collect the solids in bins. We have to open the doors on the solids handling building for the South Tower refuse to pull the bins out. And that's when typically some of these odors escape. So I think when you say at night, a lot of times the refuse comes here early in the morning to pick them up, and sometimes it escapes. And we have, and so we are actively working on constantly trying to improve the odor control of facilities here. Like for example, when John showed you the primary clarifiers, a number of years ago we built that solids handling facility and we got rid of the old furnaces. We used to burn the sludge, and that was a real odor generator. We put covers on the primary clarifiers to collect the hydrogen sulfide gases coming off those tanks and use that and scrub that away inside the aeration basin. So we have additional projects identified in the 10-year plan, again, to get closer and closer to handling all the odors from our wastewater treatment plant. You mentioned there's so many, thousands of treatment plants, and they all have odors that emanate from them, no matter how much money you spend. And again, that's a matter of spending the money to basically, depending upon how impactful those odors are. And for example, we're in now communication with the community college, because they are the closest recipient to our odors. And we expect to be talking and having meetings with them and having tours of their staff at our plant to talk about what we might be able to do next, again, to minimize the odors over to community college.
Well, you can smell it in Round Hill, you can smell it in Carson City, you can smell it at Reno.
Oh yeah, but each one of those plants, Round Hill plant smells in Carson City. Yeah, it's
Yeah, and their primaries aren't covered.
yeah.
Or are.
For example, like each one of those the covers we put on the primary covers, each cover costs $1 million.
Yeah.
So it isn't a cheap thing that we can't just stick out some air fresheners out the window.
Well, and I think to their part of the point that they're also making is that that digestion process, we do a different type of processing of that waste. So it doesn't produce methane gas that gets released or could be burned to generate power. That is a different type of wastewater treatment process.
Yeah.
And in our estimation, that would be more expensive and more challenging both to build and then operate that type of facility. It wouldn't be a cost-effective way to run, to process the waste that we generate as a community. And so the way we run this plant and the processes that we use, in our estimation, are the most cost-effective ways to do that. So we don't generate that methane gas. There are odors that are generated, the hydrogen sulfide, which is the rotten egg smell, and other compounds, but they're not necessarily greenhouse gases that are contributing to the ozone layer depletion and the global warming concept.
In the industry, there are people, particularly some of the larger plants, who have now realized that methane gas is a fuel, like the East Bangor treatment plant in the Bay Area. They collect all that from their digesters. They also accept grease and renderings from a lot of the restaurants in the Bay Area, and they add that grease to the sludge that they're digesting, and they produce so much methane gas and run through generators that they are basically they're off the grid. They produce all the electrical power that they need to run their entire treatment plant.
Well, I worked at the gathering center, GC2 in Prudhoe. The drill site sends oil to the gathering center and they crack it, or they separate it. They send the water back to the drill site to push this oil up. They send the gas across the pipeline, clear on the other side of the oil field to the central compressor plant where I first worked for 10 weeks. And they stuff it in the ground. They have these 55,000 horsepower turbines, these great big compressors. They're rotary, and they've got a 16-inch pipe. They're stuffing all the natural gas to ground. Then oil comes from the gathering center, goes over to pump station 1 and comes down the line. So it's all that procedure and everything. They're still storing that natural gas in the ground up there since 77. That's when it started up, when we finished. And you got to figure, where's that natural gas going to go? It's all stuffed in the ground in the turbo process.
And that's why we don't inject gases into the ground. We don't have turbo process.
Well, you know, when I first come here, they had septic tanks. So when everybody was saying, well, yeah, all the trees died and everything, and I said, well, yeah, but you got to figure the leach lines, you know, it eventually is going to end up in the lake.
Okay, thanks for your questions, and thanks for coming tonight. If you have more questions, we'll be in the back to show you the poster boards. Thank you.
Thanks, John.